Hey everyone, Coach Tanner here. In this video, we're going to be doing a VOD review on some high-level SOJOURN play from a fellow coach, Highway. Before we get into the video, I need to tell you about the GameLeap website for Overwatch 2 that is releasing this month. It has step-by-step courses and strategies for every single hero. We're going to make sure that it is way better and way more in-depth than anything out there on YouTube. Make sure that you pre-order your sub at 50% off by clicking the link below. Now, this first fight is a really great example of some tunnel vision that our SOJOURN is going to have here. First, we see the enemy SOJOURN that is straggling behind, and this is going to push us to this right choke point here. Now, once we get here, we actually start tunneling on this Moira, and with 100 charge, we should be able to easily pick off either of these three heroes super easily, but Moira is probably going to be the hardest of the group because she's so small and she has that fade. Now, one of the things that we could have done instead of targeting Moira here would have been to hard focus the enemy tank. This is one of my favorite things to do as SOJOURN, especially on maps like King of the Hill, where you need a tank to be on point, kind of staying alive the entire time, where your DPS can work their magic. Now, if you focus the Zarya and you help your Zarya win that 1v1, you're going to just steamroll the first point and you're going to start your team off with about 30% on the first fight. But instead here, we are hyper focusing these supports and we don't end up actually getting anything out of it. While focusing supports is a great option for forcing picks and possibly winning fights, it's a risky play that's not always going to be the best value if you're not the best at hitting those shots. You can see here that our Zarya is getting absolutely demolished by the enemy Zarya because the enemy team is actually just hard focusing her. With our SOJOURN here getting hard pocketed by Mercy, there's really no need for the enemy team to focus him, as it's probably not going to lead to a kill because he's got that perma pocket. But you can see that we haven't even looked or shot at Zarya. She's just having a free time out DPSing our Zarya while the enemies actually hold the point. So this is really good for the enemy team. And what you need to do when you're in bad positions like this and you need to push up or you need to take the point, you really need to be focusing the enemy's tank. The enemy's tank is pretty much their anchor, right? So whenever you have your tank alive on point, it's almost impossible for the enemy team to actually push in and either stall or take that point. But if it's only your DPS, you can easily pressure them out from the point and force your team and your tank on the point. And you can see here that after the point is captured, the enemy Zarya ends up dying and we are forced back. So even with the enemy Zarya dead, the fight is already lost because they've already killed our healer, and the enemies, even though their tank is dead, already have the point, and there's absolutely no way we're going to get that point without a healer. Now, what our SOJOURN does here is extremely risky, right? They have 4 players alive right here, and we haven't even looked behind us to see who is alive on our team. We can kind of know because our Ana did die pretty early on in the fight, so we can play aggressively here because we have a Mercy pocket. You don't want to find yourself using your dash into the enemy team like this almost ever, especially if you don't have this juicy Mercy pocket or a Zarya that's just ready to bubble you at any time. Because I promise you, at your elo, your teammates will be like, why are you inting? Why are you inting? Can you stop throwing the game, SOJOURN? Please stop dying in front of 4 enemy teammates, right? So you have to be very careful about using your slide when you're pushing up to either fight for kills or to chase for kills. And right here, he makes a huge mistake and all 3 of these people know it. So these people should be easily destroying him right here, but since he had that Zarya bubble, he got extremely lucky. But as you can see, his Mercy suffered for it. Because Zarya had already bubbled both times, him being all the way up there forced the Mercy to actually kind of die to save his life. All right, now we have a really great example of our SOJOURN ult being used. First, we are setting up on the high ground, which is exactly what you should be doing as SOJOURN as much as you possibly can. Now, since there aren't a ton of high grounds on this map, here coming out of spawn is a perfect time to be using your ultimate. Where we know the enemies are going to be in this courtyard area, we can easily funnel them into our ultimate while they're running back towards point. Now, as soon as we use our ultimate, you can see the enemies are all starting to run to safety here. And this would be an incredible play if we had our team fully ready to commit on this Zarya here. Now you can see that she is so far away from her supports, especially her main support, that right now she should be a free kill if his team was ready. But we made the mistake here of engaging on the enemies before our team was ready. And if you've seen my earlier Sojourn guide, you'll know that as soon as you press your ultimate button, either everybody is going to run away or they're going to look directly at you. Especially if you give up this high ground where they can't easily chase you. Right now, this is the biggest mistake he's made yet. What he should do is immediately dash back up to the high ground, because first thing he did wrong was not look for his teammates before he engaged in the fight. The second thing he did wrong was dropping off of the high ground to try and get a better angle on the squishy targets. And the third thing he did wrong was just not shooting the tank. It's so simple right now to just shoot tanks, especially Zarya's, where they're just a walking person that's slightly larger than the DPS. Their head's pretty big, and it's really easy to two-shot a Zarya that's just not paying attention. Especially right now, in this position, he has the perfect fight-winning ultimate if he just focuses down this Zarya. A lot of DPS players don't think to win the tank v tank battle because it doesn't really benefit them that much if they don't kill all the DPS. It doesn't benefit their ego, is what I mean. So, the best tip that I can give you with Sojourn's ult is just shoot the tank as much as you possibly can. You're going to get a lot more value out of shooting the tank. It's going to be easier to get value out of it because, it's a bigger target, but it is a lot more important that you shoot somebody instead of nobody at all. Right here, we have a wonderful example of the perfect usage of Sojourn's E ability, which is her Disruptor Shot. Now, with this ability, you have the opportunity to cut off choke points and absolutely delete low HP characters that are unsuspecting. So for example, right here, everybody on the enemy team somehow got into this choke point, and Highway does a wonderful play by sliding out, turning around and throwing his Disruptor Shot directly into the choke point. This guarantees him a kill on anybody who sticks in it long enough. And right there, the Moira was not able to escape. So that was a really, really great usage of that. Right here, we have a not so great usage of his Disruptor Shot, shooting it a little bit too early on the Genji. A lot of the times you're going to be using your Disruptor Shot randomly without any thought. And I would highly suggest that you start saving it much more because there are some really good niche uses, especially to save your own life. Now here we have another great tip, and this is something you're going to want to be doing on every single map and every single time you win a team fight. You need to be pushing up towards the enemy spawn so that you can spam to get more ultimate charge. It's very, very simple to just spam down these choke points, and anytime enemies are going for peaks to get their own ultimate charge, you get a free pick as long as, it's a squishy. Now another really, really great tip that I can give you here is that no matter what, you need to learn your crosshair placement. You can see Highway's crosshair, and I'm actually going to draw a line from his crosshair to the edge of the screen, right? And then we're going to play this clip, and I'm going to show you just how his crosshair moves. You can see that it barely goes below head level whenever he doesn't need it to. So every single time that you're aiming, you want your crosshair to be perfectly head level so that anytime the enemies are bouncing up and up and down, you get this perfect time right here to headshot them whenever they land. All right, here we have another great example of our ultimate being ready and us positioning for a great ultimate play. Here, if you have a Mercy Pocket, I would highly suggest you try something like this out, where you can go on a very far off angle from the objective. So right now, the objective is the complete opposite side of the map that our position is in. And if you control the objective here, the enemies are going to obviously want to take it back from you. But if you're on the opposite side of the objective, the enemies have to either focus you or turn their backs to you to get to the objective. And if you're using something like your ultimate on the flank or a off angle like this, it can result in huge value because the enemies either have to come towards you to stop you or turn their backs to you to retreat to the objective. Another great reason for flanking with your ultimate like this is that you can split up the enemy team. For example, we have both of the enemy supports in the back line here that we easily pick off before moving to the tank line that we've literally never shot at before at Highway. Here you can see Highway's awful usage of the disruptor shot, and this is going to be really similar to how you guys are going to be using it 80% of the time. Wasting it on a choke point when the enemies literally aren't even nearby, or just using it to try and get some like 5% on your ultimate randomly. You need to be saving your disruptor shot as much as you can so that you can use it on actually useful situations. Here we have another mediocre usage of his disruptor shot. While it blocks off a choke point here, the enemies really aren't in any danger with this disruptor shot. They can easily just walk around. So if he instead waited to use it for this choke point here, he could instead separate the enemy tank from their support line and allow these two players on his team, combined with his help, to easily finish off the enemy Zarya. Here we have a great example of using your secondary fire in close proximity. I know it can be very daunting to hit your secondary fire in close proximity, but I really want you to keep an eye on his crosshair here and watch how much it doesn't move back and forth. What it does is he tries to keep it as steady as possible in Sojourn's path, so that whenever she walks past him, he can easily just react slightly and hit his shot. There's no need to perfectly track the enemy whenever they're going to walk past your shot anyways, and if you're only shooting one bullet, then one bullet counts, and as long as you hit it, that's perfectly fine. Here again, we have another awful disruptor shot from our coach Highway. So you see, it absolutely does nothing. The diva flies past it, and the enemy support literally didn't even get touched by it. So again, a wasted disruptor shot. We could have used it after the Moira dashed. We could have used it whenever the enemies are starting to refill back into the point. But again, there are better uses than just throwing it, anticipating things. You could see that the enemy team is playing very aggressively. Highway's current positioning is actually really great. What you should be doing as Sojourn is not trying to meet the enemy team head on, but easily farm the enemy team from the side, allowing you to get picks with your laser whenever you have it up. Now, whenever your teammates move into the front of the enemies like this, you either want to change your position or continue fighting the enemy tank and try and burst them down, because again, here we have a situation where the enemy is postured very aggressively. You can see all of the space that they have back here, and then we are just left with a tiny little corridor here and a choke point here, and the enemy Zarya is playing very aggressively up front and forcing our tank back. Whenever you see a situation like this, you need to help them out. Again, it is super easy to just kill that Zarya if you hit one headshot on her with your secondary fire. Watch Highway's crosshair right here as he aims and kills this Sojourn. This is a really good example of not actually moving your crosshair at all, but moving yourself left and right so that you can either match the enemy's tempo or so that they pass over your crosshair, allowing you to get that headshot. All right, now we have another okay orb here. I will say this orb wasn't the worst in the world for the main reason that he anticipated the Moira exiting through this choke point, but she obviously didn't. So again, you could wait for after the Moira fades, and if she is behind this choke point, then you could send your orb like right here, stopping her from re-entering the fight, instead of preemptively trying to stop the Moira from exiting the fight or, killing her as she's exiting. You could easily use it on this Lucio right in front of you. I know it's impossible to shoot Lucio players, guys. Here we have our first great usage of his disruptor orb. Now we are blocking off this choke point from the Zarya exiting and the Sojourn entering, and we are going to be focusing the Zarya hard as she comes up. But unfortunately here, our Genji dies due to some lack of healing. I don't know. Oh, I see why. So our Baptiste was dead, and the issue here is that we shouldn't be committing to fights whenever partial teammates are dead and we are not ready to fight. That's why our Genji died here, unfortunately. Highway was fine to push up because he has great mobility with his slide, and the Genji actually dashed in and ended up dying here. So even though our disruptor orb was great, we didn't have the follow-up that we needed from our teammates. Right here, we have some really good ultimate usage, and the reason that I say it's great, even though he doesn't make much of a play with it, is that the enemies are committed to the fight. A lot of the times, Sojourn players will activate their ult before the enemies even get to the choke point or before they even touch the point at all. And that will just cause the enemies to hide behind these safe walls and then just wait out your ultimate, which is a lot better for them because then they can re-engage with their own ultimates. So, as Sojourn, you want the enemy team to be committed to the fight before you actually use your ultimate. Again, we have a really, really great example of not moving your crosshair, but instead moving your body. But this Mei knows exactly how that works. And I want you to watch her movement here because it's awesome. What she does is instead of strafing back and forth like this, trying to throw off his aim, she's just going left here and crouching. And you can see exactly just how well that works against players who do this strategy. Unfortunately, she hit the wall and Highway ended up getting the free headshot though. Let's take a look at this, guys. So what we can do here is hindsight 2020. So with our disruptor orb on a 3-second cooldown and a choke point right here in front of us, we could very easily use it to slow down or maybe even stop some of the enemy DPS from peeking us while we're in this Zarya ultimate here. Especially with the enemy Sojourn instantly dead, not having the Moira sucking us off right here would be a lot better than, what currently happened to us. All right, here we have some really good disruptor orb usage. So we're using it to stop the Zarya from retreating, getting guaranteed damage on her, forcing the Lucio to not be able to heal her by going up and around this wall here, and allowing our teammates to focus this Zarya down, pretty much guaranteeing that we get the point here if that Lucio didn't ult. What a sick shot. Highway, we got to put this in, even though there's nothing to learn. What a nuts shot. Good job, Highway. All right, we again have another kind of quirky orb here, but actually there is something that we can gain from this. So if we watch this kill that we get on the Moira here, we actually have some really good insight. So with Highway blocking the right side of this pillar off, Moira was forced to take the left side, and since there's a gap going past the pillar on this right side, Highway was easily able to get this kill on Moira by just pre-aiming where she would be and then hitting the shot whenever she walks past. Here's a really great example of cutting off an enemy from their team with your disruptor shot. This is really, really great by Highway here. So he notices the enemy Mei is just off angling on his team. And since Highway really isn't doing anything by shooting the enemy DPS, he should be making some sort of play on this Mei here, whether it's throwing this disruptor shot or trying to push at her with his mercy pocket. Luckily though, he gets the kill on the Mei here before his entire enemy team dies, and now he is set up in a really, really great position to actually win the fight. If you notice, he is on this high ground here, and because I spoke too soon, guys. I was going to say because he's on the high ground, he survives this fight, but turns out Lucio exists. So let's talk about this. So why did we end up dying here instead of winning the fight when we had the better position and we had the advantage of a pick up? Because he is on the high ground here, he has the positioning advantage, but due to Zarya and Lucio being able to damage him from the low ground here and his teammates not being near enough to help him, he ends up having to force his movement ability out because he got too close to the enemy team. So what he could have done here is actually played a little bit further back towards the pillar so that if anything happens, if the Sojourn hit him with a big secondary fire or if the Zarya started focusing him, he wouldn't end up just getting melted and then being forced back to the health pack. Now, it would have been fine if he was forced back to the health pack here, but because he used his movement ability, he actually ended up dying to the enemy Lucio. Now you can see that after 2 rounds, we finally win our first fight here, and this is largely due to Highway killing 3 people. But again, if you find yourself losing a lot of your first fights, and you also find that you haven't shot the enemy tank at all, then it's probably because you're losing that tank battle. But because Highway just kills the whole enemy team here, there's no real reason for him to be losing this first fight, so we can kind of chalk it up to that. But again, really start focusing the enemy's tanks, and I promise you, you're going to win a lot more of these fights on King of the Hill and on your payload maps. Now, a lot of you guys are going to have this same problem that Highway has right here in this clip. He has now seen a half HP Zarya, which means he can kill that Zarya because he has 100 charge all the time with his ultimate. Now, there's a slight problem with this because now he's tunnel visioned, right? There are so many other targets. He could kill this Moira in one shot. He could kill that Reaper. Oh, he can't kill the Reaper anymore. But he could easily kill that Moira, that Lucio, this Sojourn here. He has his dash up. But he's just wasting away with his ultimate, not shooting anybody because he was focused on that tank too hard. Here's another great example of a time that you don't want to use your disruptor shot. That is to try and finish off a low HP target. Even though Disruptor Shot does 50 damage per second, you don't want to be using it to try and finish off a target because, again, it has that 15-second cooldown, and most of the time it's not going to hit that target for long enough to actually kill them, especially a Lucio. Alright, so now that we are at the end of the video, I want to kind of do a rundown of some of the tips that I gave in this video. Number one tip that I can give you on Sojourn is you need to try and keep your crosshair head level. This means that every single time you have your beam up, you should be already positioned to hit a headshot whenever one crosses your crosshair and falls into your lap pretty much. Another great tip that I can give you is you always want to be staying on the high grounds as much as you can so that the enemy team doesn't turn to focus you and you can stay alive for the entire fight, dealing as much damage as humanly possible. The next tip that I can give you is try shooting the tanks a little bit more, especially more than Highway did in this game. Even though it might not be flashy, deleting the enemy tank from the game is going to give them almost no presence when they're on the point. So, if you delete the enemy tank and you have your tank still up, then you're almost guaranteed to win a fight unless something else happens. That is all the tips I have for you guys. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.